Welcome back to the Fit Family Podcast, again brought to you by our Nutrition Scholarship, in which entries are open for a couple more days. It is totally free to enter. I'll post the link in the description below, and the winner will receive 3 months of nutrition coaching from us with whatever goal you are interested in pursuing, whether it be fat loss, muscle gain. It is totally up to the individual, and we have strategies to help basically everyone achieve their goals, especially in amongst a busy family and work environment. So I'll post the link below. You can check that out further. But welcome back, Dan.
Very excited.
Episode 2. We've got basically this episode is going to be purely about nutrition coaching, some of the success stories that we've seen along the way, and in particular breaking down some of the things that we know will work for not just the people who we work through it with. I know that's a really bad way of explaining, but lots of people who we coach have similar style hurdles, similar lifestyle constraints that they find bobs up, and then the tactics that we use to kind of help them navigate that and stay consistent. So ultimately that's the key. A lot of people know what they, or think they know what they should be doing, but it's then about the implementation strategy around that, which can be a little bit of a sticking point for a lot of people.
100%. All this information we talk about, we coach. It's all available for free anywhere.
On Google.
Everyone has access to, anyone can educate themselves on pretty much anything these days, but it's all about the implementation and how to make that sustainable and flexible for the individual.
Just on that, one off the top, a little bit of a hot question. I haven't asked you this pre-show just to get your answers ready, but what are a couple of good sources of information online that people could go to if they wanted, I guess, good health advice, endorsed by us in a way, not just nonsense?
Oh, like people we follow? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, for sure. Where's a good spot to get some information?
Instagram's a good one. I think if you follow people with the right mindset, I guess, things that you believe in, and like in terms of our philosophy and nutrition, someone we follow and who we were educated through was Precision Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic source, and it really is what they put on their socials is really geared so people can understand it.
Yeah.
So obviously if you're studying it, you go into more detail and, there's a little bit more involved. But if you're just scrolling and just need some quick information that you can actually absorb and then try and implement in your life, I find that one quite good.
Yeah. As the kids would say, Precision Nutrition is the GOAT. Their blog is excellent as well. If you want to, if that more science backed and you want to kind of understand it on a deeper level, then their blog's amazing. They've got,
I have read a few actually.
Articles on everything. It's our go-to for kind of brushing up on a topic that we haven't touched on in a while, for sure.
And in my nutrition coaching, actually, I have sent a few of the blogs to individuals because it's quite specific and relevant to that person, to that individual.
Yeah.
And it does go into the detail required if that is something that you're working on and need more detail on.
Yeah. Some other pages I follow that are good. Dr. Mike Israetel is the owner of RP Strength. So if you've ever seen RP Strength stuff on Instagram, they're great. He's good on a podcast as too. He's a bit of a quirky character. He's good, as well as, who else do we follow? Dr. Molly Galbraith from Girls Gone Strong. She's very similar vibe to Precision Nutrition, uber practical and just quality advice. If any pop into my head, like
very
they're
good
the
for
three.
Women,
Excellent. Her ladies, Dr. Molly Galbraith. They're the three that pop into my mind straight away. And for anything that I want a little bit more information on, those are the forums that I go to. Precision Nutrition, RP Strength, and Girls Gone Strong are the three. Everyone else kind of like, they're the ones that are heavily rooted in the actual scientific principles, whereas everyone else tends to kind of just post about the methods. So like their own way of coaching a principle, and that's where a lot of people get lost with nutrition. So there are things that universally we all accept to be true, and if they don't accept these to be true, then it's actually a little bit of a red flag. So something as simple as pardon me, to drop weight needing to be in a calorie deficit. Like that's kind of just, it's just basic science. The law of thermogenesis, we all lock that in to be true. But then the way in which we all coach that, and different nutrition coaches kind of endorse, well, that's when you get into your paleo, your ketos, your fasting. They're the methods. So people who focus on the principles and then kind of guide their clients to the methods that would work best for them, that's the people who we tend to kind of lean towards.
Yeah.
Rather
Also,
than just a one-size-fits-all approach.
Agree. A lot of influencers and people you see on Instagram, it really is opinion. And I read this quote once, and I've just got it up so I don't get it wrong.
Like arseholes?
No.
Oh.
What?
Everyone's got one. The opinions. Haven't you heard that?
No. Anyway, okay. That's a little bit R-rated for our family podcast, Ben. So opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability and no understanding. Whereas the highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our own egos and live in another's world. And that's what I think I really love about the one-on-one coaching, because it really is about that individual. And so if you lack that empathy, and then you can't help them. You can't help them.
Yeah.
You can't give them the best advice for optimal implementation.
Yeah,
because everyone's situation is just so unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to break down a little bit of our process, and that's really at the forefront of it. And that's a much deeper thought than opinions are like ourselves.
No,
but
yeah,
it's true.
100%. But that is the world we are in. It's basically everyone just putting their opinion out there and thinking it's right, and then people try and apply that to their life, which is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, we see that a lot, that whole kind of like square peg, round hole, stuff that works. It's just anecdotal evidence, like this worked for me, this will work for you. And that's the, the separation that we do between principles and methods, is just making sure that the approach is tailored to that person. So, first question, and I've struggled with this for years. Like, we've been coaching nutrition for since 2020.
2020, yeah.
As a standalone program, and I still struggle to elevate a pitch it. So people be like, "Oh, so what is it?" And I'm like, "Oh God." And I feel like it's, my answer is evolving, put it that way. But the way I basically describe it now, if I've got 20 seconds and not half an hour, it's just like personal training, but for your lifestyle. So everyone knows that personal training, so, okay, well, I see a trainer, he's going to assess my goals, limitations, injuries, my physical capabilities, or at least a good one will, and then put me through a workout that's tailored to where I'm at, with the hope that I will improve. Our nutrition coaching is exactly the same as that. So we take, we have a kind of a structure and tactics that we know work well for a lot of people, because a lot of our different clients are, in a similar demographic with similar lifestyles. But in that, the time in which we apply the different changes will really vary depending on the person, based on that initial period where we kind of gather all the information, assess where people are at, take their goals into considerations, and then start to plan ahead and plot a path forward with the input of the client. That's the most important thing. It's not just a set and forget, okay, well, week 1 you're doing this, week 2 you're doing that. It's like, it's collaborative in that way. And that's sort of, again, that's way longer than any elevator pitch you'd ever be in, but that's sort of loosely our philosophy, and the way in which we apply that is completely different from person to person, much like a personal training session would be.
I love that. You described it really well. Like everything in life, I think everybody is very much outcome based.
Yep.
And people really struggle to understand current state. And that's so important, where you're currently at, to develop the plan to get where you want to be.
Yep. Yeah. For sure. Like that outcome based, that can be a little bit of a challenging juggle initially with a lot of our clients are quite high achievers, and it can be hard to kind of realign them on where they're at with their nutrition practice, because they want to jump straight from 0 to 100. It's like, well, I should be doing all these things, so like, why can't I? And then they just go straight too hard too early and experience a little bit of burnout. And realigning that kind of
the expectation.
Yeah, the expectations, focusing on the process, and realigning those expectations comes down to a lot of education based on letting them know all the different things that impact your ability to execute on a nutrition protocol. Like, most people won't necessarily view a lack of sleep as something that's holding them back from their nutrition composition goals, or they won't, late meetings for 2 weeks won't be something that they kind of draw a parallel to, oh, well, that's why I'm struggling with my nutrition. But it is, because it impacts your mindset, which then impacts your ability to execute what you're trying to do.
And your hormones.
Yeah, 100%. And it's our job as coaches to educate our clients on the impact that it has on their lifestyles, to basically give themselves a break, because they're so hard on themselves. Oh, why can't I do this? And then when you take into account the week and stuff that's come up, it's like, actually, it might be the case. I've had this recently with the client who, in the 12 weeks that we worked together, and she has PCOS as well, which does slow down results. It does lower your metabolism. So she steadily dropped weight across the 12 weeks, as was her goal, whilst finishing up at her old job, starting a new job, and then having a deadline that was pretty intense, all in that first 12 weeks. And when we would break down, she'd say, oh, I've struggled this week. And that was just, fingernail deep analysis. And then when we broke down why, she'd actually done a terrific job, because you really need the whole picture to kind of assess, your success in a way.
Oh my God.
And not just looking at a number and going, I'm a failure.
100%. Everybody looks at so many things in life in isolation.
Yep.
Like,
outcome based, as you just said.
100%. Just, but this is wrong. And without that wider lens, and something I think in life helped me with the wider lens was actually running a small business. Having to have kind of, a view. You can't be an expert in everything. You can't be a specialist in everything, but you need to be across everything.
Yeah.
So having that wider lens really does help kind of evaluate and recognize, hey, all of these wins along the way, and just not letting perfection cripple, and just,
It's one thing I really appreciate when I check in with people who have done the nutrition course, just every fortnight or so, just touching base, how you going? They'll say, oh, I've had a really hard week, but I've controlled X, Y, Z. And it's, it's not just, it's been tough. There's just a level of depth to their answers where that's been a bit out of control, but I've controlled, this, that, I've done my workouts, I've done this. So I'm, I'm controlling what I can. And that is a big teaching point in our programs, is just focusing on the process and not getting too rattled by, a lack of progress on the scales or the measurements, and not getting too high when it's going really well, and just staying relatively balanced, because we can all control our process, provided that the process is the right one for the person. But, sometimes you can't control the way the scales are going to fluctuate, or a meeting going into your calendar and having to miss a workout or something like that. And if you want to feel, positive and in control, as opposed to kind of overwhelmed and stressed, then just having a few things that you can perform every day to keep you in a good, healthy mindset is really, really important. So, the coaching philosophy, which we've kind of touched on a little bit already, but I think where we differ from a lot of nutrition coaches and coaching program is, and I tell everyone this at the start of their program, it's like, I could care less. I mean, I want them to do well, but I could care less about the results you see in the next 6 to 12 weeks. And I'm far more interested in the results you're going to get over the next 6 to 12 months. and just being sustainable and not doing anything that's going to be too invasive to your lifestyle already, but to make sure that we have the big picture in mind, because, and that's not what a lot of people want to hear, I think, which is, that's okay. Like when you start a program, it's like motivation high, I'm ready to go, give me all the stuff. But that's a mindset that upon further questioning has probably let them down a little bit in the past, just being a little bit too hard and then not finding a way in which it can kind of settle into 6 out of 10 effort, as opposed to being 10 and then back to 2 or 0. So I think that's probably where we differ a little bit from other coaches, and I think that approach is endorsed by how well our clients do at maintaining the results they get. Like we have very, very few yo-yoers, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like there's, weight gain comes or goes over your lifestyle, and it's not necessarily because of your ability to practice good nutrition or not. Like, some of our clients have gotten pregnant, and obviously that's, you will gain a little bit of weight there, but there are very, very few occasions I can think of where someone has kind of finished our programs, I actually can't think of one at the moment, and then not being able to continue to practice the lessons that they've learnt to a really high level. And I think that's sort of our separating spot.
How often are we scrolling our socials and we see a post from a client and it's just like, wow, 12 months ago, there is no way they would have been getting up on a Saturday morning and going to park run.
Yeah, like, or just excited about stuff like that.
That's what fulfills us, like that ongoing, sustainable, that's amazing. Whereas, and we've said it before, society is about the wow factor.
Yeah.
It's like, 5 kilos in 1 week. It's like, oh no, we don't actually want you to do that.
Yeah,
that's actually, that's not sustainable practice. We want this to be a life.
Absolutely. And our before and afters will never compare with like a 28-day detox or some kind of crazy invasive plan, because lots of nutrition programs are geared towards that. It's with the marketing in mind, where it's, how can we basically deplete this person to the point where they look good in a photo, but, low energy, low testosterone, or, like struggling to sleep, on the edge, low energy, all sorts of stuff is just, and it's hard because a balanced approach doesn't necessarily cut through the noise, and it's not terrific marketing and stuff like that, but it's just, it's basically just a little bit of integrity, really. It's like you can't just burn people out and just leave them at the end.
Well, they can, because then also that's how they keep making money, because obviously without sustainable practice, those people can't go off and maintain that. They then go gain 10 kilos and be like, I remember what worked, that tea.
Yeah, and
so I'll go back and pay for that tea again.
There's a really popular gym franchise at the moment which is starting to close its doors a lot around Melbourne, that basically built their program off an 8-week plan, that when we saw the details of it, it was so intense, and like intense to the point of being absolutely shite, where people were just spinning their wheels like a hamster, training for 45 seconds on, 15 off, going really, really hard, having a huge calorie deficit, and then at the end of 8 weeks, achieving on paper terrific results, and then in 6 months they were doing the program again because, or they were injured, or because it worked last time. And it's like, well, it didn't work last time. So yeah, life comes at you pretty fast, Mark Wahlberg. Even though I think he's holed out, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, smart guy. Damn it. I don't know who owns it now, but anyway, like those type of programs, like anyone can be uber disciplined for a period of time and highly motivated and see transformative results on the outside, but ultimately the best results are inside out, because it essentially changes your values and what's important to you, and then that starts to then change your health, and as a result, for a lot of people, their body composition starts to reflect that. And it doesn't necessarily come across in a 6-week before and after, but like I said, it certainly comes across on the 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, 2 years. Like we've worked with people in 2020 and 2021 who are maintaining their results, who have pushed on, who have improved their fitness beyond a level that they probably thought possible when they, submitted an inquiry form online. But as you said, that's the stuff that just like fuels us, because there's never a post where we won't see stuff like that and just not be like fucking how cool is that? Yeah, how cool is that? So what's the loose structure of our one-to-one nutrition coaching program, Dan? Like in the times that you've worked with clients, and we have stressed that it is individual, but there is sort of like a loose template and timeline that we tend to follow with most people. So how do you kind of break down that 12 weeks?
Okay, so I think we've touched on it already today, but understanding the current state is just so important for us, and we really do spend a lot of time in that space.
How much time?
A couple of weeks. So that's how we start off. We obviously need to gather the information about that individual.
Yeah. So we do that with an induction questionnaire. When someone signs up to our program, we send that out, tell them not to rush, take your time. It's an important step. It usually takes them a couple of days to get that back to us. And then we've got the initial consultation where we work through that together and just get as much information as possible.
Yeah, that is...
Yeah, that's an hour.
Oh, that conversation?
And that flies. That hour flies.
Yeah, that conversation basically shapes the next 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So from that first week, then going into the detail. So gathering all the information on the first week, we do through a food diary.
Yeah.
To really understand their current nutrition practices.
Yeah, and it's funny, I have a chat with a lot of people when they start, because motivation's high and their awareness of food is going to go through the roof. When you have to stop and take a picture of what you're eating, it's not, and that first week especially, it's not meant to be like us policing you or anything like that.
It's hard to explain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's and I often have to give people an example. I'm like, listen, if you would normally have a sweet snack at 3 p.m, you're probably not going to feel like that this week, because your motivation's high, you're feeling good, starting a bit of a new program. However, I want you to make a note maybe that you would normally do that. It's not like, I don't want anyone to eat a Kit Kat if they don't want to, but it's more like I would normally do this, but I'm not because of the way I feel. That just lets us make sure that the intensity of the changes that we prescribe you are not 200% harder, because you've already actually made changes because of the increased accountability. And that's a really important step. And most people are really good at understanding that and then maybe detailing, like I was a bit better this week, performance wise, because of the awareness that I have. And, having to take a picture of everything obviously gives you time to make a decision. So that can be, uber powerful at the start anyway, without even making any changes. Most people tend to see a little bit of movement towards their goal initially, just based on that high level of accountability.
Yeah, so after we gather all that data, the education process begins. So obviously, depending on the information we get, we prioritise on what we should educate on first. But generally speaking, protein is massive for everyone, just given the way...
Oh, there they go again, talking eat. Protein.
That generally is our starting point.
Yeah. Some of the ways we might prescribe that is basically just by trying to include a consistent source of protein around 30 grams with most meals. And it depends on the person as to, some people are ready to kind of do that across all three. Some people are doing it sporadically anyway, and it's just about being a little bit more consistent. And some people, we just start with breakfast. Just make sure it's at meal one or whatever your first meal of the day is. And then, that's that tailored approach. No different to if we'd be in the gyms. Some people are starting with an air squat. Some people are starting with a 60 kilo back squat. Like, it just depends on the person and where they're at. And that's why that evidence gathering is so important, so that we don't load people up with a program that's too hard. And then most people come to us with that preconceived idea of, I'm really bad at doing diets, or I'm no good at this, or I've tried this before and I've failed. So when people kind of have that inherent bias about themselves, it's important that we don't reinforce that by making things too hard. And then it's I can't do this because I've struggled with this in the past. It's like, that's not the way we roll. We want positive, like, moving forward progression. I'd rather it be too easy at the start than have you trying to jump really hard to try and reach that level.
Yeah. Meeting that person at the point that they are at, I think, is so important. I had somebody who he didn't have the best diet, but because I knew him so well, I knew what he was willing to do. So it was quite funny, actually, because of some test results, he was actually given some free sessions with a dietitian at the same time. And what the dietitian was prescribing was quite true. Like, okay, you're currently having Cocoa Pops, let's go to Weet-Bix. Whereas I knew this person and what they were willing to do, and they were fine to go straight to eggs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, understanding how much you can push that person, what they actually want. Do they like eggs? I think that's often a question that's not even asked. Like, the preferences is just so big. Like, what do you like? What do you dislike? These are the things we really go into detail, and we tailor it exactly for that person. Whereas generally when you go to professionals, it is a little bit more generalized, like this dietitian. Okay, you're having Cocoa Pops, let's have Weet-Bix. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that is an improvement.
Yeah, it's not wrong. Yeah,
absolutely,
but
that's not wrong.
It might be wrong for that person.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get a person who has never eaten a Weet-Bix before in their life, and then that's a great piece of advice. And that's, like, we have had clients go to dietitians in the past for various reasons, and I think where that industry falls down a little bit is not in the knowledge. Obviously, they know more about nutrition than we will ever know, but it's that coaching aspect and understanding the client. And our program allows us to deeply understand clients, what they struggle with and what they do well. And I think that's an important point as well, is like, so many of the guys who start our program are doing a lot right, and then it's just focusing that energy on stuff that's going to actually get them the results thereafter, and not worrying about the stuff as much that's not. And that's where that hour initially, and then the half an hour catch-ups every week after that, where we break down the results and the education around the progressions, are really important. Really important.
I think something we failed to measure as well when we are collecting that data. In order to be able to know how well you've done, you need to have some measurables. So that is really important for us. Obviously, we advise people to take body measurements, or we take them for them, photos, weight, things like that, just so you can see the progression along the way, because there is a lot of education and at each piece. And that's what I find quite intriguing as a coach. When we introduce certain education pieces, the measurables are quite interesting.
100%. And in particular, just a side note, you use the small business example, and that perfectly encapsulates the why you need to have more than one way of measuring your progress. And 80% of people will jump on the scales, and that's fine. Like, your relationship to the ground and gravity's pull is a fine way to measure your progress. But in the same way that if you only judged your business success on revenue, you're leaving so many other things, like other ways that you could improve profitability and all sorts of stuff on the cutting room floor. Like, people will lose 3 kilos but 40 centimeters. Yeah. And which is enormous. Or people will not lose any weight and lose 10 centimeters because of a recomposition. So you need to have more than one way, preferably 2 or 3. Photos, measurements, scales, how you feel. People
Energy
always
levels,
people always skip over that. And we've had clients where I would write down every morning as an accountability piece, when you wake up, out of 10, how do you feel? And, you can chart that. You can score it. After I had hydration, I did my workout, I felt better on those days. And then it's just starting to gear in your lifestyle to feeling good. Because when you feel good, all of a sudden a high protein breakfast feels way easier, and an extra walk feels way easier. And just to make that point is, we are, outcome based as a society, and it's important our clients see the results that they're after, but not at the expense of all the subjective ways of measuring. Like, if you lost 10 kilos and felt like crap the whole time, then it's not worth it. It's not what we aim for with our clients, and it's not what they sign up for either. It's like, no, I want to feel good, like like you guys do, or like other people, or someone else who's actually done your program. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, so we do track the progress along the way as well. So
Yeah,
it's
every
not
week.
just set and forget.
No, God, no.
We have weekly check-ins, and we do focus a lot on how that individual is actually feeling. That way we can adjust the program for that person.
Yeah.
So, and the education piece might change dependent on that as well. So even though, like you were saying, we do have a basic setup in the education piece, generally starting with protein, then we go through the other macronutrients.
Yep.
It could change dependent on that weekly catch up with that client.
Yeah, absolutely. If things pop up that it didn't initially, or it all needs to be fluid. Otherwise you're making changes based on information 8 weeks ago, and it's no longer relevant. So we do constant assessments and move forward. I also find with the measurements, just make this point, is the more people tend to measure their weight, especially, the less attached they become to that. Whereas if you only measured your weight once a fortnight or once a month, that becomes important, because then it's like, have I, and I'm doing quotation, this is poor podcasting, like, have I wasted my time, or have I not worked hard enough? It's like, the more you do it, the more you see it fluctuates, the more you see that it actually doesn't necessarily reflect your efforts in the short term, the less attached to the scales you will become.
Also,
over.
I don't want to stress, do not weigh yourself daily, guys.
Yeah, and for some people that'll be no good, and for other people it might be the right idea. It just depends on the person. But that's like, you'll be up 300 grams, down 400 grams. Ladies as well will be like, we're 3 weeks in, I haven't lost any weight, and then the next day they'll get their period, and it's like, you need to just be patient with the process and make sure you're measuring your results under the same variables, because your weight will fluctuate every cycle for sure. It just depends on where you are. We've got lots of resources on that. So if you would like more on your cycle, definitely message us, because that's a really, really important factor in your overall health, but also your nutrition progress. Some of the better results you've seen, and what do you think were the key lessons behind them, is success leaves clues, which is one of my favorite sayings. And I can start if you like, because there's one that jumps to mind, and I think this is this will be pertinent, and I hope pertinent's the right word, but I think this will be relative to a lot of people out there. I started coaching a lady in late 2020, and she was convinced that she was addicted to sugar. It's just like, I have my meals and then I can't stop snacking in between. I was like, okay. So we did our initial consultation, and then we did our food diary, and I could see that her protein, is that P word again, was uber low at all the meals, apart from a few of her dinners, which were Hello Fresh. So obviously the ingredients were set out for her. But as soon as we bumped up her protein from breakfast to lunch, her need to snack just went off a cliff. It's because that protein slowing down her digestion and giving her a steady release of energy just completely took away her hunger cravings. And sometimes it's just the simple stuff like that. And she had heard us talk about protein, but then, how much is okay? And there's obviously some more questions that you need to explore there. She had heard us talk about it before, but the actual accountability to implement it, with some chats about what will work well for her and how to adjust some recipes that she consistently had. I think over the course of the 12 weeks, she'd lost over 7 kilos and a massive amount of centimeters, particularly around her midsection. But yeah, just that need to snack in between was gone within 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
amazing,
that always
isn't it?
sort of like comes out as just like something so simple can just yield a huge result. Have you
Yeah.
got one?
Again, for that implementation piece, like actually going through it step by step with that individual is just so rewarding.
Oh, 100%.
Like she knew about the protein. You said she'd been following us. She'd heard all our stuff. Like she was well aware.
Yep.
But she still couldn't actually practice it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we help you practice that? What do you like? What don't you like? What are you currently doing?
Yep.
And even the accountability to yourself of writing something down. So like we do things every single day that we don't think about.
Yep.
Okay, it's just second nature to us. Actually having to write it down and then go, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
I knew I did that, but I didn't really want to acknowledge that I did that.
Yeah, well, the stories we tell ourselves versus the actual actions, there can often be a little bit of a disconnect there, not just with nutrition, with everything. That's and you made the point earlier, it's like the information is there, it's all, it's online, but that actual strategy and implementation and accountability is really where the magic is. And
100%.
that was
100%.
numero uno on my list.
Yeah. One with my client, and it's actually funny, we were talking about it before. Remember about the fruit buns?
Yeah.
So I had this one client, she's so beautiful. Shout out, you know who you are. Loved a hot crossy, right?
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't we all? They are lovely, and that was something that kind of kept creeping into her food diary.
Yeah.
And the whole mindset thing of, so she'd made massive changes, both in nutrition and in exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, so her lifestyle had improved so much. But as part of that, she said, why can't I? Why can't I have a fruit bun every time I go to the shops?
Yeah. Just quickly to interject,
Yeah.
we've got nothing against fruit buns.
I love a fruit bun.
Healthy Bake, if you're listening, we can be bought.
We can, absolutely.
Integrity, not here. Okay. So if you want to send over some product.
But that whole mindset piece of like the habit of buying that bun, and we went through it, and eventually what stuck with her, so I'm cueing her each time, like I'm coming up with different ways to try and explain why you can't have a fruit bun every time you go to the shops. And I ended up with...
Well, it's not ideal, is it? Yeah, it's just calories we probably don't necessarily need if fat loss is the goal.
Yeah.
Every time, for sure.
Exactly. So eventually, this is stuck with her, and she's probably laughing right now, is we all enjoy going to a party, but we don't party every day. So, like, things like that, really understanding, okay, like, why am I doing that? Like, there's all things we like.
Yeah.
You know, how many people like alcohol? We're not drunk 24/7.
No.
It's like, in order to enjoy that, what do I need to do? And yeah, just understanding, again, the bigger piece, the wider lens.
Yeah, and often it's quite simple, isn't it? Like if you changed nothing but stopped having a fruit bun every day, then that would actually probably yield some pretty good results. Like it doesn't need to be drastic. Just some awareness around your intake can go a long way.
And you know what's really funny? To this day, years later, so I coached this lady
Was it
in
2021?
over COVID,
Yeah.
so 2020, 2021. She will still send me a message
Eat a fruit bun.
of when she occasionally has a party and gets a fruit bun.
Love it.
It's quite funny.
Yeah, but stuff like that and some education around your favourite foods and
How can you incorporate?
Yeah, the place they have for this specific set of circumstances, because some common mistakes or preconceived beliefs around nutrition is that, if I would like to lose weight, which is the goal 95% of the time anyone starts to work with us, or that, I have to eat in a deficit for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's just that fruit buns may not have as much of a place over the next 8 to 12 weeks. But then when you are looking to maintain your results and you have, you don't need to eat in a more restrictive way, absolutely they have a place in your day-to-day if you want to fit them in.
I was about to say, it's all about how, like, because we always say, like, I enjoy every meal I eat, pretty much, isn't it? It's very rare that I don't. We talk about food a lot in our house, and it's quite funny because our little girl is very similar.
She loves food.
She does love food.
Makes love to her when she's eating it, actually. Lots of noises.
It's quite amusing. It is quite amusing. So we do want people to enjoy the things that they love, and you can incorporate it, but it's understanding how.
Yeah. Understanding how, and that's that number one piece is just education, and it can be as sciencey or it can be as basic as that person needs, because just because a plate has a lot of food doesn't necessarily mean it's bringing a lot of calories. Just because you've only had a tablespoon doesn't necessarily mean it's a small meal. And just understanding that, and what the foods you're eating, how they break down in your body. Some of the other ones that sprung to mind, we've had a few people lose, over 20 kgs, not in the 12 weeks. They'd typically lose, like, on the higher end of loss, and it, depends on the person and their starting point. On the higher ends is more like 10 to 15 would be on the upper echelons of our 3-month program. But these two have gone on to lose over 20 kgs and maintain that loss really well and maintain that lifestyle really well. And the key for them, and it was the same, is they were just so organized. Like, they had it, not to the point where they knew they were going to be at every minute of every day, because I think people would find that level of detail quite stressful. It's like, I have to be overly diligent. And it's like, no, you don't. And these two ladies also showed a really good ability to be flexible with their intake when they were out, if they were at a family event or something like that. And the thing that they shared in common, and lots of our clients have this, but these two in particular, they were just curious. Like, they would message questions all the time, which is, that contact is part of the program. And, I stress to everyone at the start is like, if you have a question and you wait until our next catch up to ask it, I'll be annoyed. I want you to message me when it comes to you, because otherwise you'll forget, or I might be able to give you an answer. And, but they was like, what's the go with this? How do I handle this? Would this be good or would this be good? And often, my answer would literally just be, well, what do you think? And they think, I think this. And it's just confirming that they actually are doing a good job, and they can start to have a bit more confidence in their ability to execute. But both of them were just so organized. And, on Tuesday nights I have swimming, so I need to have something that's quickly ready to go. Or do I need to think about a pre-cooked meal service that I can, just easily use there? And then I just need, and then everything was just automatic. They were just like, yep, I've done well. I was like, great. Yeah, you have. Like I said, how's your week going? Yeah, I'm doing well. And they had that confidence that they were doing well compared to, I don't know, see what the measurements are. And the level of comfort and the lack of stress that they had the whole way was just, it made my job extremely easy, because we'd get to weeks 8, 9, 10 and I'm like, so how you been? I was just like, you're doing a really good job. And we would chat about hypotheticals and how they might handle holidays, and, any ways that we can make their lifestyle smoother. Are there things where we can cut some corners and make it easier? But the actual nutrition science and implementation, they were smashing it. Yeah, and that continued long after our 3 months as well. And another 15 kgs lost, really.
So if we're talking about, if we tie it all back to our program, so that gathering of information, that education, and then that last piece of our coaching really is setting them up for success after us.
Yeah.
So what that entails in our coaching could be so different. I went to a supermarket with someone. Like, that was a session.
Yeah.
Because that's what that person needed. That's what that person wanted.
Yeah,
That's
what's
not,
your
but
saying?
that's not part of our program. It's like, what do you need moving forward?
Absolutely.
And that, honestly, that was quite fun. I really enjoyed that. But you know
What
what
is
I'm
it?
like, I love a supermarket. And just picking options that were slightly better for that person. So, like, what we are buying, like, in the supermarket, okay, that's now a habit. Like, that's what we get. That's what we get for our kids. Whereas, like, oh, what about that option that's next to it? That's actually more optimal for you given where you're at now.
Yeah. How to read a food label.
Really, like, we go through that in the program. That's a good one, actually. I quite like that one.
Yeah, giving you the keys to ultimately drive yourself around.
Yeah.
Is just important.
Yeah, so the last piece is so unique to the individual.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love it.
Yeah,
I love
and
it so much.
Hopefully that's a theme that's kind of come across throughout this podcast as well, is that we have loose, we have structures, but we apply them loosely, like depending on where the person is. And I was thinking about a way to explain it where it was like weeks 1 to 4 is largely evidence gathering and kind of changes to the actual implementation of the nutrition and making sure that you're getting what you need and in a deficit or at maintenance, depending on the goal. And then weeks 4 to 8 is kind of like optimizing, like how can we make it easier? How can we make it less stressful? Can we prep this? Can we try a new recipe? Like, is anything harder than it should be? And then weeks 8 to 12, as you said, that ongoing, what's going to be difficult? How can we make it easier? And just problem solving the future. Because a key aspect of the 3-month block is that there's not many things that you won't experience in your day-to-day life in a period of 3 months that'll be new. So, like, I've coached people over Christmas, over Easter, over
it's the best. I love when
over a family holiday. There'll be birthdays. There'll be, like a busy period at work, a quiet period at work. Like, there's lots of circumstances that you'll tick off in that time that you may not necessarily get in a 3-week, 4-week, a shorter term kickstart program, I guess. So by the time you get to that 3 months, that person is rock solid confident in their ability to continue the changes, because the facts are they probably haven't gone that long on a new diet ever.
Yeah.
Like who does a self-led diet for 12 weeks? Like, that's pretty rare. Rare.
Yeah. And it's not. You have your diet, we'll help you optimize it.
Yeah, exactly. Some common struggles that have popped up. I was just thinking of one before, and I think it is like mainly around that organization and being structured and a little bit less flying by the seat of your pants. Is just thinking ahead a little bit, making decisions in advance. I use that term all the time, and that works well. All right, shall we wrap up with a question? We had a ripper actually that's come through. So supplements more broadly, we're not massive on them. We prefer to get our nutrition from like more whole foods. But one that we do recommend and endorse is creatine, and that came through on the Instagram. So creatine.
Hang on, do you want to ask the question?
The question was literally, what's the go with creatine?
Okay.
So the go with creatine is that it's uber beneficial for anyone who does strength training, especially. Basically, it lets you push a little bit harder. It helps you store more ATP, which means those like explosive contractions, like your maximal contractions. Yeah, strength, power. You can do more of it. It reduces muscle catabolism, which is basically the breakdown of your muscle for fuel. So helps you maintain lean muscle mass, and then it helps you recover faster. So it sounds like a bit of a winner all around to me.
Yeah, it is the most researched supplement in the world. They've never found any negative effects. The only time we've both taken creatine, I should mention, especially when we were training strong, when we had goals, strength goals.
Yeah.
The only time I stopped, and again, there's nothing that has been proven, but I did stop taking creatine when I was pregnant just because there wasn't much on it.
Yeah. Risk and reward as well. Like everything would have likely been fine, but in that situation, if you don't know for sure, it's like it's just no stress not to have it, isn't it?
And also like during that time I wasn't maxing out on lifts or anything like that, so
yeah,
I didn't see the benefit necessarily. There are also cognitive benefits,
with a slightly higher dose.
So Ben was just explaining, I didn't actually realise the difference.
This is relatively new. In the last 3 or 4 years, this has sort of been knowledge, I guess, is that for most people with performance athletic muscle goals, 3 to 5 grams a day is going to be absolutely perfect. Just a little teaspoon. You can load creatine, but it's not really necessary.
And probably not relevant to
exactly. And then to get the benefits is up to 10 grams.
Yeah.
So a little bit more.
Yeah, it's quite a big difference.
If you're feeling a little dumb,
that.
if you're feeling dumb, 10 grams.
Okay, I've obviously never received those benefits yet.
I wasn't taking
triple
enough. My dose. All right, have you got anything else to add? One of our longer episodes. So if you do have any questions about nutrition coaching or even just some tactics or strategies that you might need help with, please, we are nerds and enjoy talking about it and helping people. So check the link out below and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, true. Loving all the applications so far, guys. It is open to absolutely anyone. Don't think because you're our friend or because you've been a client or because...
You know what? If you've listened to 51 minutes of us talking, then you deserve to enter. All right? So just enter the scholarship.
Yeah, looking forward to working with whoever that person may be.
Yeah, sounds good. Catch ya.
Bye.